All right, I've started recording it, so we'll
Okay.
have record of whatever we're chit-chatting about. Um, let's see. I had a funny story to share with you. So I guess it was really the thing that first prompted me to reach out about maybe doing an interview was when I had a support ticket out for the locally hosted Google fonts, and it was something that Brett was working on for me.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, so I have a day gig, I work in like a health and wellness, like corporate health and wellness kind of deal. So anyway, I'm at my day gig, and I remember just getting a message from the client, and she was like, hey, my site's down. I'm in the middle of a promo. And I was like,
Oh no.
what? And I knew that I'd just done some speed optimization stuff for her. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh no, like what have I done? And I went and actually tracked it down to like, oh wait, I totally gave Brett just like, I let him just have access to the live site. We were cowboy coding, and whatever file he had tried to upload, it just something didn't work right. Um, and anyway, the site was down for just a moment. The client threw up a backup really quickly, so it was really not a big deal. Um, but for just a little while there, I was like, what happened? What could that have been? And then
Okay.
then
Yeah.
it came together. I was like, oh, that's what it was. Like that was totally. And I told the client, I was like, that's entirely on me. Like I apologize for that blip. But I was trying out a beta feature that I probably shouldn't have been trying on your live site yet. So I mean, it was all fine and everything, but um, it was like out of that support thread that I was like, oh yeah, by the way, so I'm working on this course. Would one of you guys want to get on an interview? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what
Well,
led to this little conversation.
well, thank you too, actually, because I think you helped Brett track down. I remember he pinged me in Slack when your site went down. Because you, if someone's site goes down, we try to both hop on to see if there's anything we can
Yeah.
do to help. And really, he had you handled at that point because I couldn't. Like, it basically was just like you were getting him another site, and then you were gonna fix that. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with the beta feature, yeah, there's always things we can't test on our side, like because we've had no issues with the Google Fonts stuff on our side, and then I think we had two people. You were one of them that something with the WAF downloader, like how it actually downloads the fonts themselves,
Mm-hmm.
seems to have an issue on like SiteGround and a couple other places. So actually, the patch we have coming
Okay.
out this next week has all that fixed. We figured out a much better way to download the fonts, and so that all bug should be gone.
Yeah.
But beta, yeah, unfortunately, beta sometimes just
Cool.
that's
Hey,
what happens. So
beta's gonna beta, but I'm glad I could take one for the team so that all the other users could maybe get a little patch that would
yeah,
benefit
no,
them. So
you did
so
help us track it down because for Brett especially, like he really has to see it break for him to fix something, and so we can launch dev sites all day long over here, but if we can't replicate it, like there's nothing really we can do
mhm.
other than assume like, okay, I think this will fix it, but we need to test it on that actual site. So, but
Right.
I
Well,
think we
glad to
all,
be of service.
yeah, I think we all change stuff on live sites. These anyone that says they don't is probably lying. Like it's
They are. I'm convinced.
yeah, it's I mean staging sites are great for a reason, and we use them all the time too in dev sites too. But like if it's late and you're just changing something, sometimes you just go to live site and do it. So it's
Yeah.
just one of those things.
Like I know for a fact there's a link in my footer right now that should link to YouTube, but it links to my contact page, and I'm like, am I going to push the staging just to fix that? No, I'm. That's a
Exactly. Yeah.
that's simple.
Exactly.
So yeah. So yeah, I am really excited about this interview. Like I mentioned, and I don't know if you had gotten to check out the little video that I'd sent you, but I do have my I guess rough outline of my little syllabus that I'm putting together for this course. And if I could just real quick share my screen with you.
Sure.
Um,
I
so I'm
didn't
building
watch the
it.
video, but I read through all your note, like your bullet list on
Oh yeah,
what was going to
cool,
be in it. Um,
cool. Yeah. So I had actually recorded this little intro video to the course like a year ago. I was originally going to put this out
oh,
like a year ago, but pandemic and other things were uh, happening all at once, and it got put on the back burner. But anyway, yeah. So I had come up with this idea for like when I had finally found like, oh, this little mix of Cloudflare, Perfmatters, and WP Rocket seems to be like almost like that little tripod is almost like this secret
yeah.
sauce. The what would you call it? Like and I was like, oh, it's like the Holy Grail. It's like the oh, it's that thing that just makes,
I like that.
everything all come together. And I was just starting to really understand a bit more about what's working. And honestly, there's still a million things I don't know what's actually happening to make stuff do right. But I've found that I have gotten some decent results with site speed and, some core web vitals now without being a developer. Like I'm a WordPress dude. Like I don't
Yeah.
associate, I do not identify as someone who is actually really, really knowledgeable about stuff. I keep Googling stuff and it keeps working, and
Well, I mean, I call a lot of people these days WordPress implementers. They're not really developers, they're like implementers. And that's why I love WordPress though. It's like you can make a full-time career out of WordPress and not really know how to code. Like that's we can talk about when your question later on, I think was like, why do you use, the WordPress CMS? Like I can go into more about that. Like that's one of the reasons I actually really love WordPress. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll absolutely get into that. Yeah. So like I had like really outlined this, what I call it, a syllabus. I kind of made the outline of like, what would I want in the course? And I want to have a pretty extensive mini course that's actually given a lot away for free.
Okay.
Just because I don't know. I know of some people that do have maybe premium service offerings for site speed service. Hey, I'll come and do it for you. Or people might have a course, but it's kind of a high ticket item, and most of the good stuff's behind the paywall. In fact, I was in the WP Rocket Facebook group this morning and saw someone comment under someone's thread just saying like, hey, if you hire me, I'll show you all of my tricks and secrets. I was like, tricks and secrets? I don't have tricks or secrets. I'm an open book with what I know. And, I don't pretend to have some ancient wisdom that that came to me in a dream or anything. It's like,
yeah, I don't do that either. I mean, if I could, I would literally write everything I could on my blog for free, but I don't have time to share everything. But I would love to do a course like this one day too. I would never have the time with how busy our plugins are. So like, I'm glad to see there's people like you that are like doing this and it can at least like incorporate our plugin into the stuff like this. So I'm always excited when I see stuff like this happening.
Yeah. And I lean heavily on Perfmatters for a lot of things. So I wanted to show you, this is why I'm pulling this up, is so like one of the modules itself is on just configuring the Perfmatters plugin, the script manager in all its glory. I think that thing is wonderful. And just a handful of those things, deferring or delaying JavaScript now with any of the different plugins that are offering it.
Yep.
But there's a lot even early on, and I might have it in the free part. I think I do. I've not recorded it yet, but I'm gonna demo just a blank WordPress site, nothing on it. And if you go into Script Manager and just see, if you weren't going to go look in a waterfall test to identify here are the assets, but just to help people understand, hey, a blank WordPress install these are the assets. This is what comes in the box. And then when you add your theme, whatever that may be, I'm going to show a Generate Press, Cadence, and Divi, just because those have been the three that I've used the most in the past few years. But just like showing the difference between, assets that come along with those, and then load in some plugins and just showing like, hey, every time we add a thing, there's more assets. And though some people will say, oh, well, if you're going to have a lean site, you need as few plugins as possible. And I say, well, there's a grain of truth in that, but the script manager, you can disable things that don't need to be doing stuff on the front end, or so I have a bunch of plugins that only do things maybe, on the back end and have zero effect on, front end performance. But yet, I could write in a Facebook group or something like, hey, there are 50 plugins on my website, and someone would, come to my house, they would find me and just beat me for such heresy. But I love the script manager and just being able to, for myself, see what all belongs to what plugin. Because if I'm just looking in a waterfall, I'm like, what belongs to what? I do not know. And when you guys added the dependency toggle in there to see, okay, well, what scripts depend on one another, that so helps some troubleshooting, because I know that, well, if I disabled one thing, it was actually a dependency for the other thing. That's why it's broken. That's really handy. So, there really is a lot in this little course that I'm just shining a light on Perfmatters and telling people, look, if you want to take this course, you will need a copy of Perfmatters and WP Rocket for sure, and a free Cloudflare account. And that's, whatever other tools you might have that are premium, that's cool. But I'm really trying to show people to do some of what I've learned to do with just, a handful of good stuff, good tools.
Yeah,
So
no, I think those are all excellent solutions, and probably the most common ones I see on sites these days. Especially, I mean, WP Rocket's probably on 95% of the sites we work on. So
yeah, it's everywhere. And I probably will ask about it in our chat, but since I don't know if you've played with version 3.9.05.
Yeah, they started delaying everything globally with JavaScript, which we're never going to do that.
Right.
Honestly,
Like,
there's we know what they're doing though is because they want to see speed results faster for people. And like they're probably getting higher scores right off the bat, but we've gotten lots of tickets of sites breaking too. So, and it wasn't our plugin, it was them causing it to break after that update.
Yeah.
So it's good and bad, but I think what they're doing is they're building up a whitelist on their end over time from tickets of what to exclude. And so over time it will get better, but that's not the approach we're going to take. We just think about things differently with Perfmatters. And, if someone wants to do that, I would just say like use the delay in WP Rocket if you want to try to delay everything. I'd rather, we always take a more logical approach. Like I'd rather say like, okay, see, you're loading Facebook pixels, you're loading like a Hotjar, or you're loading HubSpot script. Let's go try to delay those and do it that approach rather than just saying, let's just try delaying everything.
Yeah, across the board. Yeah, I really did. Like the first site I tested it on, I was like, which was my live site, of course, because why wouldn't it be? I was just like, what if I just push go on this thing and just see what happens? And I mean, flawlessly, it was working. And I know I've seen people blowing up in the WP Rocket Facebook group talking about how, oh, this new version's broken this and broken that. And you never know what all people are using on their sites or what, hosting configuration they may have. I'm preaching to the choir here, but I've not had any issue I've loaded that new version onto both or all three GeneratePress, Cadence, and Divi sites, and it's not broken a thing for me. So I don't know what everybody else has going on, but it's working really well on my end.
I think it's mainly a lot of because those are three popular combinations. I mean, three super ones I'm sure WP Rocket has exclusions for already. It's more when you get into like the lower tiers of people like running on Bluehost, and then they have a theme from Code Canyon. Like, so it's those people that are just like that. That's what we're seeing break all over the place. And unfortunately, there's millions of those people. Like, you wouldn't think so, but there's just so many people still buying themes off of Code Canyon. Or theme forest.
How is this still a thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
unreal.
If it was me, I just tell literally everyone use GeneratePress. Don't even look at anything else. That's my philosophy these days. But I think Cadence is a good one. What's the other one? Astra, I think is fairly well too.
Yeah.
So there's some good solution out there, but yeah, just tons of people. And I think they don't know what to buy too. So it's not entirely their fault either. That's why courses like these, I think, are helpful, because someone new to the community might not even know what they're doing. So,
oh yeah. I mean, it's usually, I like that demo site. I want that site. So I'm buying whatever that is, the theme. Okay. I want that theme, and of course there's no, necessarily, there's not any regard for, what's underneath, is this going to, be a can of worms by the time I start trying to get in there and do things. So, well, yeah. Okay. So really good stuff. A little pre-chat here. I think we can kick it off and get going here. I do have my little document pulled up over here on the side of the screen. So if I'm looking over here, I'll probably just kind of loosely follow this moving down the screen as I just ask some of these questions that, and again, I'm not scripted with anything. I usually think that's just way less fun if you're just like, okay, I got to come back to this point because I wrote it down and we're supposed to get to it. I'm much more just to say, hey, that's interesting. Let's go with that. And if we don't go over something that I did have written down or whatever, it's not a big deal because we could talk again later. Who knows?
Well, yeah, that sounds good to me. And I just put like generic bullet lists under each one because I just I'm not very scripted either. I can just talk about stuff as we go through. So
Yeah, sweet. Okay, so I will here in just a moment. Just we'll have like a 3, 2, 1. Fake laughter on 3. Ha ha ha. And we'll enter on in, but I'll kind of just give a brief welcome and say maybe a small thing about you, but I'm going to let you kind of be the one to introduce yourself and kind of that first little question about like your plugins, your background, working at Kinsta, leaving Kinsta, what you're doing now, kind of stuff. However you want to sum that stuff up will be kind of where we hop off.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, we will do this thing, and I do want to absolutely honor your time today. I know we, could go maybe an hour or something, but I know we've already chatted a good bit leading up to this, so we may not go that long.
I have no time commitments today, so
okay.
If you want to go 2 hours, I'm totally fine with that. Again,
my wife would kill me.
Breaks,
I would love it.
So yeah, I use these as breaks. Otherwise, I'd be doing tickets right now, which doesn't sound
right. Well, I'm glad to get you off of that for just a moment so we can do this thing. Cool. Yeah, I'm not good at transitioning and starting, so I'm just gonna do this for us. So how about a 3, 2, 1 fake laughter? Anyway, hey, welcome you guys. It's John at Matchless Web, and today I've got with me Brian Jackson from forgemedia. He is the developer, the creator, the mastermind extraordinaire alongside his brother Brett behind popular plugins such as Perfmatters, Novashare, WP coupons. Is that it? there could be more.
That's it. No, that's okay. It. And yeah, we're pretty busy with that. So
yeah, he makes lots of things.
Thanks for having me. It's like I'm always excited to do interviews and podcasts and stuff like this. So
yeah, I'm really glad you're here. We were chatting, before we officially started here, and I was telling you are like a celebrity in my little world. I followed your blog and have used some of your products for a while now, and so it's cool to get to chat with you today. So if you could, for those that maybe aren't familiar with you, could you just give us a little background on just kind of how you came into developing plugins? You previously had a pretty cool job with Kinsta and have since left that to do your own thing. So can you just kind of give us a summary of where you've been and where you're at today?
Sure. Yeah. So I joined Kinsta in like 2016 and I left in 2020. But during then, we started kind of dabbling with plugins during my time at Kinsta, and a lot of it was just due to figuring out, here's some little niches that aren't really fully built out yet, or like, we're using plugins on our own blogs and stuff, just like everybody else. So we were figuring out like, we really don't like how this one does it, or we need something else to do it a different way. So we started just doing a little plugin stuff here and there, myself and my brother. And actually most of those plugins that we have started as just in our own little
Whoops, lost you for a second. I think we're still going now.
Yep. Okay, I think we're good.
We're back. Okay.
There, yeah. You want me to start? Maybe I could. How did I get cut off or something? I could start over.
Yeah, I think it just cut for just a second. Let's just pick up right there. So you and your brother were kind of making plugins to scratch your own itch.
Yeah, scratch our own itch, figuring out like, we really don't like how this does it. So like, let's do our own. And we were kind of just using them on our own sites, to be honest. We didn't really ever have a plan on selling anything, to be honest. He was a full-time WordPress developer at another company. I was working at Kinsta, and we had a few blogs that were kind of just like earning passive income on the side in the evenings and stuff. So we were just doing that. And then people kept asking, it started with coupons, and people kept asking like, what is this thing like you're using to show these coupons? And people kept asking so much that we're like, okay, well, what if we just bundled this and sold it, like, and just see what happens? So we kind of started selling coupons, WP coupons. And then we just said like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, working on a plugin, pushing out updates, like working with clients, and then, making a little money from it. So I was like, this is really cool. let's try doing this kind of with our other plugins that we're kind of playing with. And it kind of just grew from there. And to be honest, we were kind of just doing it as a side gig for a while. I had no plans of leaving Kinsta to be fair, until this is public knowledge too, because I've shared it on my own personal blog, and like the Kinsta team doesn't have any problem with me sharing this. Is the way we scaled Kinsta, we just grew very, very fast. I joined them in like 2016 and we had like 8 people. And when I left, there was like, I think 150. So you're talking 3.5 years.
Wow.
To grow that fast. Like, there's learning curves with every startup like that. And we kind of scaled the marketing department kind of the wrong way. We scaled support and development, I think, better. And so I got to the point of kind of just being burned out, because I was kind of doing like all these like social media, working on the website, working on content. And I just got to the point of kind of just getting exhausted almost. So when I left Kinsta, my brother Brett actually quit his full-time job. We said like, hey, we're making a little money with the plugins. Let's just try doing this full-time. It's definitely a risky move for us. And we left January 2020. So we didn't know there'd be a pandemic coming either, like literally a month or two right after that.
Great timing. Great timing.
Yeah. Fortunately, that actually kind of was worked really well for us, because it meant more people were kind of just sitting at home launching WordPress sites. So that didn't really hurt us that much. But yeah, so it's worked out really well. And that's pretty much, we're doing that full time now. It's just working on our 3 plugins. And I also try to blog whenever I can still. But I would say 95% of my day is just literally working on development on the plugins, documentation, tickets, and that repeating that every single day, basically.
Yeah, rinse and repeat. So cool. And the main plugin of yours that we will talk about today is Perfmatters. Perfmatters is a phenomenal performance plugin, and it is one that I'm leaning on really heavily in an upcoming performance, WordPress performance and speed course that I'm putting out. So it's going to be called the HolyGrail WordPress Site Speed Course. And Perfmatters is one of like the 3 legs of this tripod that I've kind of found to be just amazing for performance. And I've gotten some great results myself, and just figured, hey, let me name this thing. It's like a secret, but not a secret little mystical thing that I've stumbled across. And now I want to name it. What do I call it? It's like, oh, it's the Holy Grail. Just that light shone down, angels are singing. So Perfmatters is part of that. And that's, cool. One of the main reasons that, we have gotten in touch to do some of this today now. Before we dive into Perfmatters specifically, tell me, how did you get involved with WordPress specifically? Because there are other content management systems out there, and WordPress was not the first, but what has drawn you into using that platform and choosing to base your business around it?
Yeah, so I had to look this up kind of on my LinkedIn, because I didn't know when I really first started, but I looked way back in history and way back time machine, and figured out that like I started my first WordPress blog in 2008, actually. And at the time, my background's actually in IT. So I went to school kind of for web design, but then went into the IT world. And so I was doing IT actually for like a decade. And during that whole time, I was always blogging. Like I loved blogging and writing. So like whenever I'd learn something at work, I'd always go home that evening and blog about how to fix it. My world has always involved like problems and then how to fix the problem. And so Google loves that type of content. And so that's kind of how I got into like blogging, SEO, all that stuff. And so I was actually really familiar with like SharePoint. That was a huge platform I used to use. Most people listening to this probably never have used SharePoint, but that
Never
was a
heard of it.
huge, yeah. So that's Microsoft's, and it's not very even popular even today, but that's more like an enterprise content management system.
Gotcha.
And I had used Joomla and Drupal kind of here and there too with different clients and stuff. Because I did used to do contract work and stuff. But I started doing stuff on WordPress mainly because after trying the other ones, I found like WordPress just makes this super, super easy. and started blogging. I loved it. That's kind of where I fell in love with content marketing. And other platforms like Ghost and stuff, which actually I think, or Medium too, they weren't really around then, like, or popular. And so, because actually I really like Medium's a great platform if you're just wanting to write and don't care about, hassling with plugins and performance and all that stuff. But really at that time in 2008, WordPress was really probably one of the easiest ways to just like start a blog. And so, yeah, I just started there, fell in love with it, and I've been doing WordPress blogging and now plugins and ever since. So
Yeah. So it sounds like WordPress was, modular and customizable enough that you were drawn into like, oh, you can change things, tweak things. Like it's easier to get into this system and do things compared to some of the other, platforms you've tried.
yeah,
So that's really cool.
and going to school for web design, I used to build just sites out of pure HTML, like the old school way of Dreamweaver and building sites that way. And so WordPress kind of opened up a whole new world as far as like, having your database and then entering your content. Like I just loved the whole idea behind WordPress. But even in 2008, it wasn't really used to build websites. It was mainly a blogging platform still at that time. And so just watching it evolve into now what it is, like WordPress is now almost like a full site builder by itself without any themes. So it's just really cool to see how far WordPress has come since then.
Yeah. And there are people who will say like, oh, WordPress, that's cheating. That's not real, web development. Unless you're building it from scratch, it's not the real deal. It's like, well, if you want to, take as long as possible to do something, I guess you could do it from scratch, but why do that when WordPress gives you such a leg up? And gosh, you could start in an hour, spin up a fresh WordPress install, maybe load up a demo site of some kind, and you have a functioning working website already just to swap maybe some content and, add or remove functionality as needed. Like it is so quick when you know what you're doing to just be able to pull together a site. And I love WordPress for those reasons too. So if we move into talking about Perfmatters, again, one of my favorite performance plugins. So it is a relatively straightforward plugin to configure. I love that, when you log in the admin dashboard and just open up the Perfmatters settings panel, the first page that you're looking at, it is just a list of toggles. And I think it's beautiful. Yeah. There's just everything's grayed out, and if you turn them on, it turns blue, and you just work your way down this list. And if you're like me and the first you looked at it had no idea what all these toggles did, there's that little question mark next to each one, and there's great documentation on every single switch of if I turn this on, what's it going to do? And so over time, as I kind of got more comfortable with knowing which one did what, I just found it like, hey, this is actually really straightforward to configure. So was that, I assume it was by choice, by design, to make it that easy for people to just flip a switch and get some new settings that they might need, versus making people jump through some more hoops? Because there are plugins out there like that where maybe the user has to do a little more work to get even a really simple thing done. There's still manual work required for some things, and we're going to talk about that. But
yeah,
what was the kind of vision behind that toggle system?
Well, I think the first thing, there's two things here, and one was we decided from the early beginning that neither of us, while I went to school for web design, I am crap at design.
Yeah,
I'm good at like the building part, but not good at designing. And my brother is just a developer. Like he'll be in code like all day long. Like that's what he loves doing. And so neither of us are great at design. So we decided like, let's just use the native WordPress UI. Like we were like, some of these crazy premium plugins make you learn this whole new UI just to use a plugin. Let's just use WordPress core UI. So it looks just like WordPress. For us, that was like a win-win because I feel like it made it easier to just jump into. You're not like overwhelmed. It just feels like you're still in WordPress changing settings. And then for us, since we're not good designers, we really didn't have to worry about the design part. And that first like screen you get into with all those toggles, it kind of actually built, when we first started Perfmatters, it was because we had all these different scripts and functions running all those little toggle things. We're like, that's kind of how the idea started. We were like, this is stupid. We launch a new site, we have like a code snippets plugin with like 20 or 30 different code snippets doing different things. Like, this is starting to get ridiculous. And working at Kinsta, I saw lots of people talking about the same thing. Like, everyone's like, oh, use this snippet for this, use this snippet for this. Like, what if we just tried to combine all this stuff into like an easier way to manage it? And that's kind of how that first toggle screen was kind of born. Was it just like all those little snippets we were using on our own sites? And then it kind of just built itself kind of from there as we started adding feature after feature. And actually this new release we're pushing out this next week is actually reorganizing things so it's much easier, because we've kind of built things over time, but things got put in places where maybe they shouldn't have. So it's actually going to be even much easier to use after we push out this next update.
Ooh, you heard it here first, folks. This is exclusive news.
We're excited about that, because I think for us, we didn't know it would grow as fast as it did. So we didn't anticipate like some of the organizational stuff, doing that over time. We just kind of were adding things and kind of got, in my opinion, a little messy, but so it's going to be even easier, I think, after this next update.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, there are a lot of things that are just a toggle switch, and some of the newer settings that have maybe come in later versions of Perfmatters do involve a little more manual work. And that is one thing that kind of inspired me to want to put out this course that I'm putting out, is that I know you can find plenty of, there's documentation for the plugin, on how to use some of these settings. And for any other plugins out there, there's usually documentation buried somewhere. But I thought, it would have been helpful if somebody could have shown me, maybe just, held my hand and just walked me through, hey, here's how you do this on a case-by-case basis to implement some of these more manually intensive processes, like if you are trying to preload certain, critical resources, or if you are trying to prefetch different things for DNS, make those early DNS requests because you are going to be using some assets from a third-party source, and so on. Are those kinds of things a big source of support tickets for you guys? Is that where maybe people kind of get have a little trouble? At least I know I've submitted my fair share of tickets, just trying to make sure I understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, and actually that's kind of how our business has morphed into, like, we're very small, like it's just my brother and myself, so we're very small, nimble, and I think we spend a lot more time on support than other companies do. But actually I kind of actually like that, because I get to chat with a lot of customers and just see how they're using the plugin. And then I try to always go back and update documentation based on conversations or problems I see, customers having. So in that case, I actually think it's kind of a win-win, because our documentation gets better over time. And I think sometimes people are hesitant to open a support ticket, just in general, like not just with our plugin, just with any plugin. But I wish they would, because I feel like I've helped so many people just one email or one or two emails back and forth, and they're suddenly like, they understand how it works, they see what it's doing, and they're, it like completely changes how they think about something. So I actually encourage people to always open support tickets if you have questions, especially with our plugins. We're always happy to answer them. And like I said, it helps us improve the workflow and our documentation for everybody else. So, yeah.
And that's, I wish I could say that was the spirit that every WordPress, product company had. Some support might have a little different wrap than others, but you guys have always been incredibly helpful for me. Again, I've submitted my fair share of support tickets. I think my license fees every year have more than, like, I've gotten more than my money's worth out of that, just in support from you guys.
But that's the one advantage I think we have of being small, is that we don't have a lot of overhead, so we can spend more time helping customers, whereas some of these other bigger plugins or services really can't, because they have so many tickets, so many customers, that they have so much time in a day. And for us, like, I've spent, I'm sure some people I've spent over 10 hours helping them. And obviously we've lost money on that customer at that point, but that's not really a big deal for us because we're so small. So that's something we can take advantage of. It's just being a little more helpful. And again, it helps us make the plugin better. So
Yeah. And I love that that's the spirit that you have about it, because I can think of a couple of different maybe Facebook groups or forums who will remain unnamed, where it's almost not safe to speak up about something you don't understand. There are some people in some of these groups that, maybe they are just, the speed kings or queens, they are the ones that have got it figured out. And if you don't know what they know, then you're a dummy, you're a noob. Take that basic question somewhere else, Google it, YouTube, there can be some pretty harsh responses to, some new people. And, it's great that you guys as the developers behind this product are just encouraging, like, you got any question, let us know, because we're going to make that, make it right for you, and also improve the documentation just so that anybody can make their website perform better. Which is that's a common, we share that belief that you don't have to be a developer, you don't have to be a real WordPress person, whatever that is. I don't think I am that, but you're a real WordPress person, but I'm like I use WordPress. But you don't have to be a developer who went to school for all kind of things to know how to make a great WordPress website and to make it fast. If you want to score well for these, Google's new Core Web Vitals, or if you just want to have really fast page loads, that's not some, set of skills and know-how that's reserved for, only the elite of the elite. Like, once you understand kind of how, plugins like Perfmatters operate, and maybe some other tools, you just need someone to show you, and you can figure this stuff out, promise you. And that's some of what we do in the HolyGrail WordPress Site Speed Course, is just show you, hey, here are the tools. You want to know how to do this thing? Just, I'll hold your hand. Let's go. Let's do this thing.
Yeah. And I would encourage people to, especially newer people coming into space, to stay away from the Facebook groups, to be honest. I learned at Kinsta, ever since I joined Kinsta, like a year in, I said, no more Facebook groups for me. And I haven't done any since. So I just feel like they're very toxic, because like you mentioned, like if you say the wrong thing, like they will just attack you. So for anyone like new to the space, I encourage them I would much rather them do like a course like yours that walks you through everything, rather than like asking something in a Facebook group and then everyone makes you feel like you're stupid, essentially. And then that doesn't really encourage you to use WordPress at that point. And so, I think there's better ways to learn WordPress than Facebook groups. It's just, they're very toxic. But I mean, you have other networks like Reddit's the same way. It's just, there's a lot of toxic. YouTube comments is the same way, to be honest, too. So it's when you're not face to face with somebody, you can say a lot of things that you might not normally, dare say in person. So there's some keyboard warriors out there, that's for sure. Yeah. So like, I think it is better like for someone to do a course like this, because then I think they'll come out feeling a lot better about WordPress and what they know about how to speed up their website or something.
Yeah. And if you're someone that maybe is a little newer to WordPress, or maybe you consider yourself an intermediate level WordPress user, but you still feel like, there's some things that you would want to learn, and maybe you feel like I should know this by now, but I can't, let the Facebook group know, because then somebody's just going to dunk on me. Like, somebody's just waiting, just waiting to snipe me from a distance, when they just see me coming, with my question that is so easy for them to figure out, but I can't figure it out. So yeah, I'm a big believer in supporting any experienced levels, because I mean, everyone was a beginner once. And if at any point you decide that, some questions are too basic, or you can't be bothered to even hear someone's questions that are, beneath you, I ain't got time for that. And that is one reason too why. So along with the course, I don't know if you're familiar with Circle. I only heard about it through, I think I heard Josh Hall mention it on his podcast. I believe he uses Circle as the platform that he runs his communities through for his students in his courses. So I checked that out and was like, oh, I'm on board, because this is something, separate from social media platforms. It is a dedicated space for just your community of any kind. But Circle is going to be where I operate my community and kind of support for the course. And there is a, of course, just like in a Facebook group, there's always these little rules that probably no one reads. But I really am holding firm to this stance that, like, look, no one's coming up in here and bullying anybody. Like, we are here to help each other out, learn how to make WordPress work for us, make it faster. And if you want to learn how to make websites fast for other people, you can learn how to sell this as a service, because I'm telling you, it is a lucrative business, especially these days with everybody freaking out about core web vitals. And I've got to get in the green. Like, I've got to get in the 90s. How do I get a perfect 100, on some of these tests, which isn't absolutely necessary, but I'm just saying there's a lot of hype around it now. And so there's a big opportunity to capitalize on that and add that revenue stream to your business. So if that's something you're into, the course is probably something you want to investigate.
Yeah, I would definitely say right now, from what I see on a daily basis, like, now is the most lucrative time I have ever seen as far as like site speed optimization goes. Like, it's always been popular in the WordPress community, but as far as doing it as work, like, now it's just, because of Google's changes with the core web vitals, like, it's just everybody searching for answers on how to fix their sites right now, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So
yeah. And just to give I don't know, maybe this is like a thought experiment in this idea of value in that kind of service. So let's just take maybe your average mom and pop local store that maybe they've got a simple brochure website. Those people, if they mainly rely on, word of mouth referrals to get people into their store, and they're mostly, like, they don't do a lot of business online. They just have a website just to maybe let people know they're there. It's not necessarily going to be a game changer for those people if they all of a sudden, have great core web vitals scores, exactly. Loading their site in 1 second or less. But, go on the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's say you have a, multi 6-figure per year business or more. I mean, there are, multi-million-dollar businesses that run on WordPress. It's a thing. And the value for, websites of that magnitude, shaving a second, half a second off of, some really critical pages on those websites can really make the difference between, people staying on the site and interacting with it, or leaving because things are too slow, or, people just don't have the patience to just wait around for a site to load anymore. So, and there's data on this. I'll find it and drop some notes below the video. But I know that in some years past, I want to say Google put out just some different stats, like, hey, if your site takes 3 seconds or longer to load, the chance that people are going to drop off, like, just exponentially increases. And for every second beyond, like, 5 seconds, it's just, you don't even want to do the math. Like, it's basically saying people are not going to stay on your site if it's slow. And the competition is just, tougher than it's ever been. So it's a good time to get in on WordPress speed. So if you think that's something you want to learn to either just do for yourself, or again, start offering it as a service to other businesses, there's no shortage of slow websites out there. And so if you can find a way to position yourself as the person who is an authoritative source who knows how to do the things that can help folks out, position it just right. And it's actually a pretty easy sell if you know how to set it up and present it to people for the valuable service that it is.
And like you said earlier, you really even don't need to know how to code these days. Like, you just, if you will learn things for sure. After you work on site after site after site, you'll just learn little things that work here and there, but, like, you really don't need to know how to code. So it's like, I mean, it's really as easy as, like, someone taking your course and then, like, just do one client, do the next client, do the next, and, like, you'll learn things as you go. And, like, it's, in my opinion, it's just as easy as that, and you'll get better every single time. So
yeah, I'm a big believer in that. You do not have to be a developer, a coder, whatever. It's those days are gone. You can stand on the shoulders of the giants before us who have, made all this software so much more easy just to do things that used to take some real deal experience and know-how. And now, like, there are toggle switches in Perfmatters. there are easy things that we can just, turn on the fast button, and it's good. I did want to ask this. I imagine you guys have been asked this before. And you said, before our chat really started, that you usually see, if you get a support ticket, you usually see Perfmatters as being used alongside other popular performance plugins, like WP Rocket is likely, if not the most popular caching plugin out there. Have you guys ever considered getting in on the caching game, or integrating caching into Perfmatters, or would you consider that being out of your lane, or what do you think about that?
No, it's a good question. And I have a couple of different answers for that.
Brian has
so
feelings
right now,
about this.
Yeah, I do have feelings about this. And actually, Brett and I have talked about this many, many times. So, but right now, the most popular plugins we probably see are WP Rocket, Lightspeed, and Autoptimize. Those are probably the three most popular plugins we see across the board. And Lightspeed didn't used to be that way. Like Lightspeed has actually gotten a lot more popular over the last 2 years. But you have to really be on a Lightspeed server for that to work. And it's just, it's still a fewer people, but it's definitely one that's becoming more popular. The thing is, when we launched Perfmatters, our whole philosophy was like, we don't want to try to do all these things that other plugins do really well. And in my opinion, WP Rocket does caching really, really well. Like there's no reason to try to do caching. If you say, if 90% of the plugins I work on already have WP Rocket, why should we add caching? Because they already have a great caching solution. So, and also the other thing was actually when we launched the plugin, it was really for our sites first testing. And, all of these hosting providers like Kinsta, Flywheel, WP Engine, Pagely, they all have server level caching. So you don't have a caching plugin. You might have WP Rocket still installed, but it's actually not using the caching part of WP Rocket. You're just using the other stuff. So for us, like we use Perfmatters obviously on all of our sites, but we don't have any caching plugin installed. Kinsta does all that automatically for us. So actually, when we started the plugin, we were targeting specifically the managed hosting providers. So like WP Engine, Kinsta, we weren't targeting necessarily like SiteGround or Bluehost or GoDaddy. We weren't really trying to go after those customers. Now we do. It's changed a little bit since then because we get customers from every host now. But specifically, we were just trying to focus on those that, they already had caching at the server level. Don't need to worry about that. Let's do these other things instead. But now we've kind of morphed into, we have those customers, and then we have, those using WP Rocket, and I don't know, W3 Total Cache, Super Cache. There's so many caching plugins these days. And, we made sure our plugin works great with all of those because, again, they've been around for years. I don't think there's any reason for us to try to compete with those. I always try to push people to managed hosting providers because I feel there's a lot more value, but I'm probably a little biased when it comes to those as well. But I feel like not having to hassle with caching is a huge win for anyone, in my opinion. Like it's definitely worth a little added money value. But again, not everyone can afford that either. So, you kind of have to work both ways. But yeah, caching was one thing. Another thing was combining files is a popular thing. Like, do you want to combine? That's another thing we're never going to add. I will flat out say that right now.
HTTP3, man. Like, what's the deal? We don't need to combine
exactly.
It's coming. It's coming.
And just for everyone that doesn't know, like ever since HTTP2 actually, and now HTTP3 and Quick with Cloudflare stuff, combining files is actually an old technique that's not needed anymore and actually causes more problems than it fixes. We don't combine any files on any of our sites. I don't advise people to, but once in a while, if you have a huge site with tons of files, if you combine them, it does sometimes still help improve your scores. So in that regard, there's still a lot of people, combining files here and there. I think even WP Rocket though warns people not to do that. They say, like, this is old, don't do this, but you can if you want to, kind of a thing.
It's like, you shouldn't run with scissors, but I'm going to give you these anyway, but just be careful. Okay.
You can. And that's something that, they've just had for years. And so it makes sense for them not to really pull it from, what could be millions of customers all of a sudden. So, again, though, that's something like we're not going to add, because in our opinion, it's an old technique that's done and gone. If you're still doing that, it means you should be fixing other things, as in like using a better theme that's not so bloated, or there's other problems that you should be fixing. You shouldn't have to be combining files to fix problems. So we're always looking at trying to stay with like the most modern things that are happening with Core Vitals, and never focusing on old stuff or things that are already done really well. Because if you want to combine files, you don't have WP Rocket, I would say auto optimize 100% down every day. Works great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were really focused just on things that maybe others aren't doing, or maybe they don't need a caching plugin, so let's just focus on this other stuff. So
yeah, filling in that gap. You saw the need and capitalize on that for sure. And I guess one other thing that came to my mind. So between performance plugins, there are usually some kind of overlapping functionality where you would want to make sure that, if you're using, say lazy loading in Perfmatters, you would not want to also have it enabled in WP Rocket. How do you go about determining, like, if someone's got plugins that have both features or something, or let's say you've got 3 plugins installed for some reason that all share some overlapping feature? How do you determine which plugin you want to enable for that particular functionality, knowing that you're biased? Of course, we got, you make Perfmatters, but what maybe let's phrase it this way: what might be different between the way that Perfmatters handles something like lazy loading for images, videos, iframes, that kind of thing, versus maybe how WP Rocket or someone else does it?
Yeah, I can give you a couple examples. So it's first off, we actually use the same lazy loading library that WP Rocket does in Perfmatters. So behind the scenes, it's an open source library that everyone uses. Like tons of third-party developers use the same library. So actually, the code, if you look at it, is actually fairly similar. However, we take a lot of different approaches. You can use a library in a lot of different ways. So for us, like our viewport is different. So for anyone that doesn't really know how lazy loading works, like basically it makes it so when you're loading the page, images don't pop in all at the same time. Otherwise, they all have to download on the resource, and on a mobile device, you don't want a page with 20 images, having to load 20 images all at the same time. So as you scroll, images will load with you. For us, we've taken slightly different approaches. Some are, I would say, maybe not as good performance-wise, but more user-friendly. So our viewport actually makes it so our scrolling is smoother. So WP Rocket has gone a more aggressive approach, saying like, let's try to trim off as much speed as we can. The problem with that sometimes is as you're scrolling, you see this kind of, you see the images kind of jump in effect, and it looks kind of janky. That's the word I use, janky.
I have seen that. Yeah, it's like you catch the image trying to sneak in, but it's like, they weren't quite fast enough. So
that's one example of something where we've actually made the viewport higher. So like we might have, let's say, one more image will load on a page for ours as opposed to theirs, which is maybe not slightly as good as performance, but it actually ends up giving you like a smoother scrolling experience.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not always just after, let's get the best speed possible, because we also have things that are, that annoy us as well. And I've seen really bad lazy loading. The WP Rocket is not bad. It's just, we prefer to not have that janky effect with ours. And so that's like an example of one where we've used the library in a slightly different way for our lazy loading. And we're actually about to launch, hopefully, some Vimeo stuff for iframe YouTube thumbnails. And I don't think WP Rocket is probably going to tackle that because it's a much smaller audience as opposed to those using like YouTube lazy loading stuff. So, but we've had, lots of people wanting to use Vimeo. So that's probably something we're going to add. So, those are a couple examples of maybe ways we use it differently or think about it differently. And I'm trying to think of something else here too with it.
Well, I think, did I see in the, I want to say in the documentation when I was first trying to investigate some of this on my own, just like, hey, what is different about the way Perfmatters is doing this? You have filters that you can apply to maybe even adjust what that, viewport is, like, how far away, with the next approaching image, like how long do we need to wait before bringing in that next image? Like you can manually adjust some of that. Is that right?
And you can. So like if you wanted to say make our viewport the exact same as like WP Rocket's default viewport, you can do that with our plugin. It's just a snippet, and you can go to our docs and find that easily. We just took a different approach, I guess, for the default, because we just hate these little things that like my brother and I both hate. We're like, we're going to do it this way because we don't like how it was done this way. So making it more user friendly, because a lot of people don't talk about this, but it's what is called perceived performance. And that is, well, like how fast a website feels. So not just how fast it actually loads. Like I've seen sites that score, 100 core web vital score, but when you actually go to them, they're janky is all get out. Like they feel horrible when you're clicking between things. Like maybe they're delaying the style sheets loading. And so what you get is like, you see the menu pop in and all the styles come in like last essentially. And it looks really unprofessional. Like it's a horrible user experience. And so I think perceived performance, like how fast it feels, is super important. And not a lot of people talk about that.
Yeah. And that's a really important point, because it is really easy for, especially the performance minded people. And I've been in that camp where I might get a little too concerned with or obsessed with the, hey, I've got to see certain numbers, in these tests. And if I don't have those numbers, then the site's not fast. But I could say, oh, I'm not happy with these numbers, but go and load my site maybe on my phone, or maybe connected to Wi-Fi and then on a cellular connection, and just seeing like, it feels pretty fast. I know that the, test might not be saying it is right now, but at least how I'm experiencing it right here is not bad. So that is a big deal to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah. And I think just finding like a good medium is always the important thing. Like making sure like, if you're in a 95 core web vital score, like if that one little thing you're going to do to get you to 100 is going to create like this huge jank, like it's not worth it to get that, last 5 points. Like you want to create a good medium of like, it feels really fast. It looks good. And I'm, meeting the thresholds that Google really kind of wants you to meet.
Yeah. And I want to say that I've coined this little saying. I might have heard it elsewhere. So if someone can find someone else to attribute this to, I'd love to be able to give them credit. But I want to mention too that a website, with all the focus on speed these days, and again, it's lucrative if you can sell this as a service. Like there's money in it. There's demand for performance and speed. But at the same time, I think people can get too wrapped up in that and forget that, well, the website does also need to have high quality content that actually serves the users. Because if your content is, how do you say, dumpster fire, no one is going to, necessarily benefit from seeing your dumpster fire faster. You're
exactly.
just serving up, hot garbage content, but it's really fast. That's not necessarily going to mean that you're going to convert more of your website visitors into leads and paying customers. So speed is not everything. It's helpful if you've got some good content once things do load in. But it would be a mistake to just focus on your site speed if at the end of the day it's like, oh, well, sure, your site's fast, but there's actually not much helpful here, or things aren't really organized. I don't even know what your site's about. You're using cryptic language. Like, I don't know. It would be helpful for maybe some folks to maybe not focus as much on the speed things, like, get decent speed, but then maybe we need to work on our copywriting. Maybe we need to work on some other things that would give us a better return on our investment.
No, I've actually had lots of customers with they're scoring like 98 to 100 scores, like across their whole site, like the pages, the homepage, and they're still trying to fix. They reach out trying to fix a couple of these warnings still, and I'm like, you know what? At this point, I think you're good. It's actually I would focus on content or focus on the other sides of your business, because like as far as Google goes and as far as your site feels to me, like you're gonna win. Like so. Fixing a few remaining warnings is not always necessary. And to be fair, Google has cracked down a lot. Like Core Web Vitals is very strict these days as far as, every piece of code matters. Like if you go back 5 years, like, PageSpeed Insights has been around for quite a while, but it's never as strict as it is now. And I think that's good though, because it goes into your like why this is so lucrative right now. is because Google is like, they want sites to load fast and they're not going to stop until they do. So,
yeah. And it's all with that. The spirit behind it is we want to deliver. Google says, hey, we want to deliver high quality experiences for those that are using Google search. We want to be able to serve up not only the best results for someone's query, some content that's really going to help them solve a problem, but also that when they engage with that website, that it's a good experience. And again, the experience is not necessarily just the speed, because again, you could load hot garbage really fast. The hot garbage might not be page one of Google, but if it is, it might not stay long because somebody else that's fast and has quality content might, knock you off. But that is the heart behind the whole Core Web Vitals thing, is like, hey, let's deliver good, page experiences, for all users, and whether they're on a weak, cellular connection or not. Like, let's make the web accessible for more people, deliver, great websites. Let's see if we can, as we kind of approach time here, I'd like to just run through. I'm not going to use like a timer or anything, but like lightning round. I just have these are maybe a little more kind of for fun questions or just, quick answers. And this first one I wanted to ask you about, and you mentioned one already that I think you'll probably reference again. But yes, I do think that Perfmatters is one of the best, if not the best, asset optimizing, performance plugins out there. It's just really good. And I would tell that to anybody, not just because I'm, sitting here across the internet from you right now. I'd recommend it to everyone. But are there any performance plugins that you think are getting slept on right now? Are we missing out? Or do you think that there are some plugins out there that aren't getting the attention they deserve? Maybe they're a little more fringe, not as well known of. What do we need to look up?
I mean, you have like, was it Flying Pages? I forget he went into like a SaaS service now.
Gijo.
So it's more like Gijo. And it's more like a monthly service. So like for people wanting to do kind of like everything and just pay for a monthly fee and try to get it all done in one swoop, that's a good one, I think. He's also really good at like coming up with little new ways to fix some of the core Web Vital stuff. So like that's a good one to check out. If you want to dive into we have our script manager, but like if you want to go like full blown into that, like asset cleanup is probably a good one. Again, we've taken a more like simple approach, I think, to that. And that's kind of what we're gonna keep adding features and things, but we're gonna always, I think, keep the more simple approach to just kind of go in there and say like, hey, boom, I want to disable this, boom. Asset cleanup has taken more of a, like, that is their full thing is your asset. So like you can do pretty much anything you want with that plugin. And another one, actually, I never see anyone talking about, but is WP Armour. It's a free one. And so basically it's a replacement for your reCAPTCHA. So I see so many people using Google reCAPTCHA, and I have no joke, seen it take a score down by over 30 points, just the Google reCAPTCHA by itself.
Pretty awful. I've also witnessed this.
Yeah, it's because it loads probably like 15 to 20 requests. It also loads 2 Google fonts just for the reCAPTCHA. I think people need to realize that with Google Analytics, Google reCAPTCHA, these are not the same teams that are pushing PageSpeed Insights and Core Web Vitals. Mm-hmm. They're the completely different teams, and the teams working on those products don't necessarily care about performance at all. They care about functionality of how well does the reCAPTCHA work. So for those things like reCAPTCHA, our plugin, you can't delay it. You can't do anything to it. There's no solution other than to switch.
Yeah.
And WP Armour is basically like a full-blown Honeypot, which most people might not be familiar with Honeypot, but it's kind of like a back-end way of blocking spam. Mm-hmm. And WP Armour works with like Elementor, Divi, Contact Form 7, Ninja Forms, every popular one out there, Gravity Forms. And basically it loads like, I think, 2 requests. So you instantly go down from 15 to 20 requests and 2 Google fonts down to their 2 tiny requests. And it works really well. So I would say anyone who has a reCAPTCHA, switch to that immediately. That's actually, I put that in our documentation, like just switch immediately. So
I love that. And that makes me think. So I use Clean Talk on several of my websites. Are you familiar with the Clean Talk anti-spam?
Yeah, there's there's a few
you
performance issues with that as well.
I
It's
was
not
about to
as
say you
bad,
you
but
may have some tips for me, because there are some things that we may need to talk about on that. But I know that one of the things they promote is, hey, use our spam firewall, and you won't need to use reCAPTCHA. So that just came to mind. But yeah, we may need to talk about that one.
Yeah, and there's other things too, like using Cloudflare. I think their firewall part can actually, I think it helps decrease spam in general. Like, even though it's not technically the same thing as a reCAPTCHA, it just blocks a lot of bad traffic in general.
Yeah, love it. Next question. I know that you are an M1 Mac user. You have raved about it on your blog. I saw your write up earlier in this year, shortly after like the M1 mini and the MacBooks came out. How has it improved your life, your workflow, your cholesterol, your relationships? How? I mean, it sounds like it's done everything, but what is your favorite thing about the
unfortunately,
M1?
it hasn't improved my relationships. But if anything, it's probably hurt my relationships. But it's, so I think you were asking about the mini, but I've actually just moved to the iMac recently.
Oh, the M1 iMac.
I did.
Nice.
And part of that was because I got tired of messing with different screens that are just horrible, never comparable to the iMac screen. I was like, I used to have an old 27-inch Intel iMac like a while back and loved it. So I was like, I'm glad that these new iMacs are coming out. But the M1 stuff is just so fast. It's literally night and day. Like, I actually think it's revolutionary in terms of what Apple's doing. I know some people will argue that to the death. But as far as like CPU and memory goes, like, it is just completely night and day. And Spotify just released their M1 beta finally, Optimize app, and like, it just, that was one of the ones that was still draining my memory. And yeah, it's just completely different. Like, because you used to think like, I need 16 gigs of RAM at least or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would be. But now I'm actually thinking of moving maybe to a MacBook Air this next time around with just 8 gigs of RAM, which I never thought I would say that in my lifetime, like moving down to less RAM. Yeah. But the way the M1 stuff works and the chip, like, it uses memory totally differently. And so, it's, yeah, until you've used it, like, it's hard to explain almost like the difference. But yeah, it's super fast. And actually, I think I've seen the prices are slowly actually decreasing because they don't have this the middleman of like Intel and that whole chain supply of stuff. So like, the new M1 stuff's actually a little cheaper than some of the old Intel stuff was. So I think Apple's doing awesome stuff. This is coming from a PC guy too. For like the last, I've only been an Apple user for probably 4 years, maybe. So
yeah, it's huge. And look, I don't think I shared this with you, but up until this year, I was using a late 2008 MacBook. All right.
Oh, really?
And I've been running a little web design business now for like, I don't know, 5-ish years. And all the sites I've been building it's been slow going on my end for a lot of things. So the M1 has literally been changing my life. I've got the Air, and it's awesome. Last question, really quick, to wrap it up. We have a favorite common writing app that is a Mac and iOS friendly app, Ulysses. Okay, so why is Ulysses the best writing app of all time? And if it's not, why are you lying?
I do, at this moment, I do think it's the best writing app, and I've tried them all, like, literally. There's probably 20 to 25 good writing apps out there, that might seem like a lot, but there's a lot out there. And I was using Bear for years when I first moved to Mac. I speak very highly of them. They're a great little app. But Ulysses, if you're just writing, Ulysses is it's much, much better as far as Markdown goes. As far as organization goes, I think it's much better. And I like the color schemes too. They let you customize a lot more stuff than Bear does. So like, you can customize what you want your bold font to look like, how big it is, the color. It's just, if you're writing every day, Ulysses is the best one out there. Now, I will say one thing about it. I am watching. The one thing I don't like is I use Grammarly a lot. I know some people might think Grammarly is a crutch, but I use it just to fix things when I'm writing fast. It just helps me fix little, screw ups here and there. So you can't use Grammarly with Ulysses because Grammarly, first of all, doesn't have an API. And that's the one thing I don't like. Now, if Bear is working on a web version of their app at the moment, and I hope Ulysses is doing one too, because the first one to launch a web one means it will probably work with the Grammarly extension. And at that point in time, I might be trying Bear again or whoever does it first. So we'll see.
Yeah, love that. My son has arrived. He has made it to the house. So we're gonna pull this to an end. But yeah, I love Ulysses. I think it's phenomenal. Sometimes I publish to WordPress from Ulysses, but you're right. I mean, from the organization to the markdown, customizing your colors and all as you're writing, it's a beautiful app, and I love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Brian. You've been wonderful and generous with your time. Thank you so much for the Perfmatters plugin. I'm really looking forward to kind of showing some users how to get the most out of that thing. And so, again, if you're a performance-minded person, if you're looking to speed up your own website, or if you're a service provider, you're a developer designer who wants to offer site speed services to other people, it's time to get in on that game, and I'd be glad to help teach you how to do it. My son's got his bucket of toys here, so it's time to play. All right. So, Brian, thank you so much. I am going to get out of here, but thank you for your time.
Cool.
And
yeah,
I'll see you in the course.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks.
Yep.